Hey guys, if you like the story, please subscribe. I need all the support I can get. Chapter 9, Pre-Race Recon. What would make a man want to bet serious money, sight unseen on a race? Just how fast is Mr. Frog's car? These are all questions that must be answered before any money is wagered, he thought. That evening at an embassy function, for some obscure occasion or another, Bob was getting himself a cocktail. Feeling someone a little too close, he shifted his feet and noticed a very interesting and attractive woman in her early 30s standing next to him. She was not a tall woman, with long brown hair and an incredible ass that was attached to some great legs. Standing very close, she had Bob's attention immediately. She smelled exotic and expensive. "Hello there, are you enjoying yourself?" the beautiful woman asked in a throaty voice with a faint French accent. Trying not to look surprised, Bobby responded dryly, "I'm sure I will after my second or possibly third cocktail." She lifted her firm and beautiful chin and genuinely chuckled as she looked him in the eyes. "I usually have to have a few myself before these gatherings are tolerable." "Are you a regular on the circuit? I'm new around here," Bobby teased with his most charming smile. "I'm afraid so. My father is the French ambassador, Marc Léon. I'm Brigitte Papon, so nice to meet you, Mr. Bobby. Everybody seems to know who you are," as she extended her perfectly manicured hand for a firm handshake. Like most people who shun the limelight, her knowing more about him than he knew about her was a little unsettling. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Papon. I'm Robert O'Shaughnessy." "That's funny. I was hoping you might be this Mr. Bobby person that I have been hearing so much about." Deciding to play along, he replied, "What have you heard about this man, if I might ask?" His eyes were laughing, but his face was fairly straight, or so he thought. "Well, since you asked, from what I hear, he is quite the character. He has seriously injured some local criminal who I am told needed to be injured. He's a dangerous man and no one to be trifled with." "Is that so?" was all Bobby could say with a poorly hidden smile. "Yes, that is so." She poked him with her elbow in the side. She was now laughing and teasing in return. "He also has considerable influence and contacts locally." "Really?" "And I hear he's extremely handsome and charming," she said as she moved closer until their shoulders were touching. "Handsome and charming," Bobby repeated. "He sounds like quite a guy. I'm beginning to wish I was this person," Bobby chuckled. He was now locked in on this sexy woman, and he noticed that she was as interested as he was. Bobby's guard was down, and his body language told her that he was available. This gave her the opening she had hoped for. "Perhaps you would like to continue this conversation somewhere else," she said while virtually hanging on his arm. People were watching, and they both knew that tongues would wag about tonight's encounter. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. It would give people something to talk about, which was the most important thing after all. "I think we're being watched," Bobby said playfully. "Our leaving might cause talk, or even worse, sully your sparkling reputation. If I was this Bobby guy, you should be more careful who you associate yourself with. From what I've been told, he's a personal assistant of some kind. I'm not really sure. His status in the embassy seems rather vague. Is it true that he works for his friend the trade minister?" she asked. "Now, how would I know anything about that? Even if I did, that type of information would probably be classified." Bobby giggled like he does after a few drinks when he's really having fun. "What about you, Ms. Papon? What's your story?" Bobby asked in his most faux innocent voice. "I'm sure the life of an ambassador's daughter must be far more interesting than mine. I don't know if I should discuss the family scandal. Nothing like a messy, high-profile divorce to get folks excited. Add in prominent families, marital infidelity, sexual improprieties, and voila, you have instant notoriety. My soon-to-be ex-husband was caught with his teenage boyfriend. It was in the papers for a little while. Now it is something that is thankfully in the past. It was decided that my coming to live with my family here in Nigeria would be best for all. That is, unless I commit suicide from boredom." Her raised voice and hearty laughter drew some glances from those nearby. "Sounds like you and this Mr. Bobby guy might have something in common." Bob was now having so much fun he was trying not to giggle and spit up his cocktail at the same time. "I thought I was working on that," she said pointedly, while looking him in the eye in a manner that could not be misunderstood. I seriously doubt that this fellow comes to an event like this. He would most likely be found someplace far less sophisticated and probably much more fun, Bob remarked offhandedly. There it was. He had thrown down the gauntlet. Now all she had to do was pick it up. After all her maneuvering to get to this point, she was not about to let her opportunity to pick up the most exciting man she had met since coming to Nigeria pass easily. Do you think I could possibly meet him? She said in mock excitement. I'm not sure, but maybe we could cruise around a bit and see if this rascal can be found. You never know what might happen, Bob told her. That sounds like a sure cure for boredom, and more exciting than this. She was now leaning forward so he could admire her very sweet and proportionate cleavage. What do you think would be a good night for that mission? He asked. I'm free this Friday. Is there an opening in your busy schedule? Let me check with the boss. Can I get back to you on this? I will be waiting with bated breath, she almost purred. She then handed him her private number, which she had already written on the back of her business card. This was a pre-planned move that Bobby did not fail to notice. Bobby reciprocated with his low-status business card, the ones that described his position as Assistant Secretary to the Minister of Trade. He had others that were embossed and had the title of Executive Assistant, U.S. Embassy. You had to have the right power tools in the diplomatic trade, he thought. I believe you were about to have your first date in Nigeria, he said to himself. He then watched her near-perfect ass gracefully walk away with such sexiness that Bobby could only marvel. Why is it that a beautiful woman with a sexy walk could do more to arouse his passion than a plain woman did naked? Of course, knowing that this show was for his benefit was a nice extra. So too was the fact that he would be hitting that incredible ass with great vigor later. That she was also looking forward to doing the nasty with him made it all even better. Nothing like a win-win situation. Over dinner the next evening, the subject of Bobby's first social engagement was on top of Sharon's list. So, where are you going to take her? She asked. I thought we could go to dinner at the Hotel Parisien and see how that goes. After that, I was going to play it by ear. Maybe stop by the Black Cat. I'm not up on the local nightlife. Perhaps she has some ideas of her own. The only idea she has is getting you into bed ASAP. I saw how she was trying to crawl into your jacket like a little mouse at the mixer, Sharon said. Did you think no one noticed? She laughed. Let's not assume anything, Bobby bantered back. She might be just lonely. Lonely my behind. She has the hots for you and you know it. Well, she does seem to want to meet this Mr. Bobby guy, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that happens. He laughed hard as he smacked the table with his hand a few times. Somehow, I'm sure it will. Sharon smiled a knowing smile at the dangerous bad boy who had become part of her family. What will you wear to this rendezvous? I was thinking slacks and a sport coat. Nothing too formal. I'd like to keep things casual. Don't you dare! She will be dressed in her best to be seen with the infamous Mr. Bobby. This is a big night for her socially. Besides, I want everyone to see how nice you look when you are dressed up. Just for me, would you please wear the Armani pinstripe we got you for Christmas? It really shows off how nice and trim you are. Okay, I give up. I will wear the Armani. Bobby held his hands up in surrender. On the appointed night, Bobby appeared at the French embassy in a limousine. Very nice for a low-level assistant. Where did you get this? She asked as she poured a glass of champagne from the already open bottle. A friend of mine made this available. They help when they can. I'll bet they do, she smirked knowingly. Sharon was right. Brigitte was dressed like a walking wet dream. Looking her best and very sexy, she knew that she had her date's full and complete attention. She had spent all day going through her wardrobe trying to find the perfect dress, the one that fit her curves at that moment in time and weight. This was a difficult decision, right up there with the invasion of Normandy and splitting the atom. In Brigitte's case, she found something appropriate. It was short enough and sufficiently low cut to show off her time with the personal trainer. Of course, Bobby was playing it cool and pretending not to notice, as he usually did. Long ago, Zita told him, treat a whore like a duchess and a duchess like a whore. That was a piece of advice that had served him well over the years, and he never forgot it. Pulling up to the curb at the Hotel Parisien in a limo attracted the usual amount of attention. Everyone wanted to see if someone famous might be in back. When Bobby and Brigitte got out looking like movie stars, the onlookers were not disappointed. Many took their pictures, showing off her incredibly sexy legs and heels and a very short dress was a treat for the men that noticed. In his handmade Italian suit, selected by Sharon, Bobby looked every inch the wealthy and powerful man, which a woman like Brigitte should be with. They made a handsome couple by any measure. Stopping at the bar, Bobby's new friend, the bartender, asked, "What would you and the beautiful lady like, Mr. O'Shaughnessy?" "I'm not sure, William. What would the beautiful lady like, Brigitte?" "Now that I have tracked down the elusive Mr. Bobby, I would like to celebrate with some champagne, I think," she said. "And you, sir?" the bartender asked. "The usual, William." The cocktails came in near record time, despite the fact that there was a full bar of people waiting. This was not missed by the other patrons or by Brigitte. "I guess being the guest of the infamous Mr. Bobby has its perks." "Most of the time it just doesn't suck," he answered around a huge smile that bordered on a smirk. "What shall we drink to on our first date?" "How about a boredom-free zone?" Brigitte smiled. "I'd like that," Bobby remarked casually as their eyes locked for what seemed longer than it actually was. This was going to get very interesting, he thought. The dinner was excellent and the service was better. Even the daughter of an ambassador was impressed by the attention lavished on them. She had grown up around rich and powerful men all her life. Being pampered and waited on was nothing new to Brigitte. But Bobby got more than simply being attended to. People really liked him, and it showed. Men like Bobby were an alien life form to her. Most men had to flaunt their wealth and position, not to mention their possessions. For those type of men, women were as much a fashion accessory as their car or clothes. Not to mention they were disposable when out of fashion or favor. A man like Bobby, who was both confident and charismatic, was a walking aphrodisiac to a woman raised around foo-foo men that talked for a living. They did nothing of any significance or importance, and they knew it. That's why they were afraid of anything and anyone that could upstage them. Being seated across from Bobby only lasted a few minutes. Brigitte immediately started rearranging the table, much to the panic of the maitre d', who came running over to her table as if his hair was on fire. "Mr. O'Shaughnessy, is there a problem?" he asked with genuine concern. "No, George. My friend just wants to sit next to me. Could you please accommodate her wish?" "Of course, sir." The table was quickly rearranged and the settings placed side by side. With a couple of glasses of champagne in her, Brigitte could not keep her hands off the most masculine and desirable man she had been close to in a long time. Before dessert arrived, Brigitte had her hand on the dessert in Bobby's pants, and she was not disappointed. Bobby did his best to maintain the upper hand. He played it cool while she was playing around under the table. He slowly leaned over and kissed the back of her bare shoulder with just the right number of teeth to make it a gentle nibble. It was at the right time, on the right spot, and he could feel her melt under his lips. The check arrived and was paid for in cash. The generous tip was most appreciated, and the waiter was disappointed that his offer of an after-dinner aperitif on him was declined. This kind of treatment was nice, but it couldn't be bought. It had to be offered. That was something new to her. In her world, money and position usually got whatever she wanted for the asking. To have extras offered without asking was a degree of hospitality and deference that she could grow to like. The limo was waiting at the curb, and off they went to the Black Cat for a cultural experience, the likes of which Miss Papon had never seen. On their way to the club, Bobby found out that Brigitte was wearing thong underwear. Tonight was looking better all the time, he thought. Looks like I have a girl that wants to be bad. Entering the Black Cat with Bobby was like being with a rock star. Rather than taking his fame as his due, Bobby treated everyone like an old friend. Just getting to their table took a few minutes, as Bobby had to press the flesh and greet everyone like a politician running for office. Once seated, it was obvious she had never been in a place like the Black Cat, at least not since her sorority days. Only this time she wasn't slumming with the other rich girls on a dare. She was hanging out with a local celebrity. The men were respectful, and the women not too resentful. Being the most beautiful woman in the room was not new to Brigitte, and neither was being with a rich and powerful man. But this was different. She felt welcome, not to mention safe. The jukebox had several American favorites added at Bob's suggestion, of course. Nothing like classic Motown to bridge the cultural gap. Bobby put some coins in the machine, and the Righteous Brothers came on. Taking her hand and guiding her gracefully to the dance floor was so smooth and natural that Brigitte knew that this was a man she could fall hard for. He was also a man she could never own. Here was a free spirit, and everyone wanted to be with him in some way. They danced like a couple that had been together for years as they glided smoothly around the dance floor. As they came back to their table, Bobby watched as she shook some pills out of a bottle and then swallowed them with her drink. "Vitamins?" Bobby asked teasingly. "No, silly, antidepressants," she answered. "Do you really need them?" "Somehow I don't think I will be taking these much longer, but for now it's probably best." "Have you been taking them long?" Bobby asked. "Only since I found out that my bisexual husband had been cheating on me with his 16-year-old boyfriend. Along with the shock and public humiliation, I had to get tested for STDs, and then I had to wait for the results. I can't tell you what it feels like to wait and see if you have AIDS or some other horrible disease. I just got my tests back, and I'm squeaky clean for your information." "Well, that's good to know," Bobby told her. "I was hoping you planned to check for yourself," she whispered in his ear as she slowly ran the tip of her tongue around it and grinned at him, knowing how erotic it was. "I think we might have to fit that into the program," Bobby laughed as he sat back and had a sip of his drink and undressed her with a look that they both understood and appreciated. "I know it's a little early, but how about taking me home and sending the driver back?" "That can be arranged. Got any other good ideas?" Bobby asked. Brigitte's efforts to molest Bobby on the way home were not wasted. He had not been with a woman since he arrived, and her enthusiasm was refreshing. Finding her soaking wet was inspiring, to say the least. Standing up in the sunroof of the limo with a cocktail and a glass of champagne, they cruised the streets enjoying the breeze. Kissing his neck and working her way down his chest and stomach, Brigitte dropped his pants and he got some incredible oral sex. Pulling her up by the hair before she was finished made her pout. This gorgeous vixen was not to be in charge. Bobby left her apartment a little before dawn to avoid any embarrassment. Not wanting anything even close to a commitment, but leaving the door open for further erotic adventures was a form of diplomacy that Bobby was very familiar with. He had a lot of practice.